I can take you to the exact spot where I was. I was actually at youth group when I was in 8th grade. Can anybody identify being a youth group in 8th grade? Or something like, oh, yeah. And I remember we were playing in the gym, we were playing basketball, and it was one of those where the basketball went onto the stage because our gym was also used for church as well. So the gym went onto the stage, and so I went up the stairs onto the stage. And as I'm on the stage getting ready to retrieve the basketball, I look down and I see our new youth pastor. We heard there were rumors that he was going to be coming sometime that night just to meet everybody. And so I look down and I see our youth pastor, and he's in flannel, which is cool. Some fashions just don't ever go out of fashion, you know what I mean? So anyway, I see some of the teenagers, the others in the youth group, are circling around him, and what I saw changed me that night. I never even talked to him at that point. I talked to him a little bit later. We introduced ourselves, whatever. But I looked down, I saw these circling teenagers around this big burly guy with a beard. And what I saw was a guy who was strong. And I saw a guy who was confident. And I saw a guy who was happy. All the things that I wasn't. And it brought such peace to my heart, knowing that God had sent somebody who was stronger than I was, who was happier than I was, who was more confident than I was, and maybe he could speak into my life. Maybe he could be a help to me. Because I was going through a turbulent period. I come from a Christian home. My mom and dad were both very involved in the church. And then things started to unravel in my parents' relationship, in their marriage. And so that was always a security to me. I knew that no matter what, at the end of the day, I had a safe home to go back to. And then all of a sudden that started to get pulled out. And it felt like that, the rug being pulled out and you're just kind of left like, oh, and that's where I was in life. And so for me to see this guy who just looked strong and confident, I was like, that's what I need. And thankfully, God sent I heard somebody had sheep. Somebody just got some sheep. All right, cool. How many sheep do you have? 3 sheep. Anybody have more than that? You're the winner. Does she get a prize or something for most sheep? Okay, they're going to hook you up with a prize later. Probably pizza or something like that. Let me just ask this question. And I don't want you to raise your hand, but how many of us feel maybe just kind of alone? Because that's how I felt. I just felt like, man, my mom and dad, they're kind of struggling with these other things going on now, and I just felt like I had to somehow make it through life now on my own. Just kind of like, I'm here. I don't feel like I have what it takes, but I'm here. David in the Bible, we know that he eventually became king, but he was a teenager once, and when he was younger, they had this big ceremony thing where, if you remember, Samuel, he was like the main man of God in the nation. Like everybody knew who this guy Samuel was. It'd be like the greatest pastor, or the most famous that was leading the nation spiritually. And Samuel came to David's house and basically told David's dad, man, I'm here on some important God business. And where God is going to choose one of your sons as the next king of the nation. And so David had 7 other brothers. They're all invited to this really, really big to-do. This big ceremony, this big name is coming to our house for this really, really big, important occasion. David's not even invited. What's he doing? He's out with sheep. He's out just watching sheep. He's not even invited to this. He's just kind of on his own, alone. Not even considered that, well, maybe maybe God would choose him. Like, wasn't even considered, wasn't even invited. And so he's out. Anybody have to babysit? Anybody? How many of you get paid to babysit? So the rest of you, you're probably like the older sibling or something. Yeah, so you know that babysitting is a glorious thing, right? It's just always wonderful. Well, anyway, that's kind of the idea of David. He's just out watching these sheep. And I can't say that I know tons about sheep, but I do know a couple things about sheep. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but sheep need somebody. They need somebody to help them with food and with water. Like, they don't just go out and get their own food. They're not like out prowling, hunting around. I also know that sheep like to wander. You got to keep them corralled. What's that?
They're the dumbest animal.
She said they're the dumbest animal. Sheep just kind of wander like, ooh, what's this shiny thing? Down into a ditch, or hey, wolf, want to be friends? It doesn't usually go well for a sheep. And you never hear of a team name, at least I haven't, like Detroit Lions, like, we're going to change our name to the Detroit Sheep, because that's just like really cool. It's like, nobody does that. Why? Because sheep are not that brilliant. You don't really see sheep in like fighting gear, So anyway, David is out with these sheep, just kind of sheep sitting, making sure that they're cared for, they have water, they have food, protects them, from animals that might try to get them. And so David knew what it was like as a teenager. So, sometimes we think of these Bible characters like, yeah, they had it all together their whole life. This guy was a teenager. He knew what it was like to feel uninvited, to feel unimportant, to feel just kind of, I guess I'm alone. I have to somehow make my way my own way. And we're going to come now to, as the story goes, then finally they call, his 7 brothers come down through and they say, nope, this one's not the king. Nope, God hasn't chosen this one. Like, they get to the end of those 7, like, I'm kind of at a loss here. Do you have any other sons? Like, well, yeah, there's the one. He's out watching sheep. It's like, go get him. Let's see, maybe he's the one that God has chosen. And so, as it comes about, David is the one that when he comes, God tells Samuel, he's the one. He's the one that I want. And so, following this time, David confronts Goliath. There was that whole story, takes down the big mighty giant. But then there was a season in life where things aren't really happening for David. They're not really going in any great direction. Like, what was that whole, you're going to be king because God said thing? What happened to that? Like, it's not really progressing in that way. And so he's just in this season of limbo. It's just confusing. I remember when I was back there in 8th grade, and if I were to have one word that probably described my life, it would be confusing. I just really wasn't sure like what to hang on to. It seemed like there were so many choices and so many voices. Well, David, during this time, and he had some enemies, some people actually wanted to pick him off, namely the king who at the time, because the king didn't want him to be king. But he actually joined himself, or tried to, with another king. And if you have your Bibles, I'm going to be reading in 1 Samuel 22. 1 Samuel chapter 22. So David is trying to align himself with this king. Sometimes when we go through confusing times of life, or just wonder I really am not sure what's going on, it's very tempting to try to align ourselves maybe with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or somebody that maybe we shouldn't be aligned with. And that's exactly what happened with David at this point. He's just like, well, maybe I'll just try to link up with this guy. Maybe this will get me somewhere. And he quickly realized, uh-oh, this is getting me in big trouble. And so I'm actually going to jump back. If you're at 1 Samuel 22, I'm going to jump back a verse or two, because now here he is, and some of that king's people are like, he shouldn't be here. Do you remember who he is? He's the one that took down Goliath. And so all of a sudden there's all these rumblings, and David realizes, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here. And so David actually pretends to be insane. It says in the Bible, it says that he just started like scratching on doors, and he allowed drool to come down his beard, just like, and it just became this crazy guy. Why? Because he's thinking, maybe this will be my way of escape out of here. I love, there's some funny things in the Bible. There are some really, really cool things in the Bible. So the king, seeing this guy just clawing at doors and, however he was speaking and drool running down his beard, the king says, must you bring this madman to me? He said, we already have enough of them around here. I love that. It's like, why do you have this crazy guy here? We have plenty of crazy guys already around here. We don't need another one. So anyway, David leaves this. He finds some cave and he just hurts. He just is heartbroken. I'm pretty sure that Psalm 142 was something that David wrote on the heels of this. So he gets out of this tragic situation, could have been a deadly situation. He's on the run. He's still back to square zero. I don't know what God is doing in my life. He finds this cave. He's all alone. And he pens what I believe, Psalm 142. I'm not going to go there or read the whole thing, but one of the things he says there is he's just pouring out his heart. He says, no one cares for my soul. Nobody. I have nobody. I'm here in this cave alone. I'm trying to figure things out. Nothing is really going well, and he just comes to this conclusion, nobody gives a rip about me. He went into that cave a very desperate and lonely man. And there were some things that happened before he left that cave that were amazing things. Things that God was confirming that, yes, I chose you. I put my hand on you. You feel forgotten, you feel abandoned. Watch what I'm about ready to do. And it says in verse 1 of chapter 22, it says that his family came and they just gathered around him. But then listen to this in verse 2. It says, then others began coming. Listen to who came, okay? Yeah, his family, his relatives, they all came. Okay, yeah, I kind of was hoping they would come. I already know. Listen to who else comes. It says, then others began coming. Men who were in trouble. It says, those who are in debt. And those who are discontented. And it says that, and David became their captain, about 400 of them. Now, personally, I believe that God at the right time every king needs an army, and God was beginning to mobilize this army. But it's not exactly the group of people that you would say, yes, if I were to choose my team, I would have chosen you. Because he just brings these people start coming to him saying, we need a leader. We need somebody. Man, we're just kind of desperate. Some of them are like, you know what? I'm in debt. I have nothing to give. I am at the lowest place. Young, dumb, and broke. I'm just in debt. And there were others that were just discontented with life. You know what? My life stinks. I don't even know if there's any purpose to this life. I hate my life. So all of these people are starting to come around David as well. I am completely discontented with life. I don't understand what's going on. I really don't even want to be in this thing anymore. It just feels like more of a struggle, more of a fight. And I kind of feel like I'm done. And they started coming to David. So these who were and then the ones who were in trouble. I don't know what all that means of what that trouble meant, but some of these who were in trouble, maybe trouble with the law, maybe just trouble with choices that they made and they're reaping the consequences, whatever. But you have these people that are in trouble, people that are in debt, and people that are discontented. In other words, no one who came to David had it all together. Nobody. Nobody came like, you're pretty sure you're going to be glad I'm on your team. None of them were that way. And yet David, because he knew what it was like to be a shepherd, he knew what it was like to take care of sheep, he knew what their needs were, he started bringing them in and accepting them. That's amazing to me. These people that were just kind of scattered in their brokenness, and he's just bringing them in. I have a place for you. Yeah, you're in debt, we'll figure something out. You're in trouble, we'll figure something out. You think life sucks? Come on, we'll figure something out. He gave them community. I'm so glad to see every one of you here. And for those of you that are leaders, man, that is awesome that you guys can don't take that for granted. When you look back there or look around and see that there are adults who are here, they could be doing 100 other things. And that is your support group so that you can know no matter what, you don't ever have to write in your journal, nobody cares for my soul. I'm so glad that you're in a place like this so that you know that. And you can feel that. And when there are those times that come when it's like, I just don't feel like anyone cares for my soul. And you've got pastors here. You've got people here. I'm so glad for that. Stay with that. The enemy will try to get you to move away, will try to get you to isolate. Stay with the crew. All right? It's going to be necessary for you. But no one had it all together. David takes them in. He gives them purpose. He gives them something to live their lives for. I'm not going to go there, but this is homework if you want it. This is really, really cool. Sometime on your own, go to 1 Samuel 23. It's the next chapter over. Look at what happens. Look what God and David do with these 400 people that are in debt, discontented, and in trouble. It is amazing. You're not going to want to miss it. I'm telling you, it is such a cool story. And as you're reading that story, think again of who these people were. They were not exactly like the high and mighty, the elite that had it all together. And yet David still said, hey, come on, I'll bring you in. And if you have your Bibles still, I'd like you to turn to John chapter 10. John chapter 10. And just as David became like a shepherd to these people that were broken, or maybe you could say misfit or lonely, they weren't connected anywhere. As great as David was as a shepherd, there's an even greater shepherd. And in verse 11, Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. And he says, the good shepherd sacrifices his life or lays down his life for the sheep. And then he said, a hired hand, man, I just realized I need a Bible with bigger font. Hey, would you mind reading for me? John 10, 11 through 15. Yes, please.
I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, since he is not the shepherd and doesn't own the sheep, leaves them and runs away when he sees a wolf. The wolf then snatches and scatters them. This happens because he is a hired hand and doesn't care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep.
Thank you for reading. Cool voice, by the way. I like that voice. Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. And I'm willing to be your shepherd. I'm willing to be the one that I will make this promise to you that I will never, ever, ever leave you. I will walk with you every step of the way. You won't always feel me. It won't always seem like I'm there. But I promise you, I will walk every step of your life from now until your dying day, or I come back first. I'm going to walk it with you. You never have to walk one step alone. I will always be there listening to every word you say, even the words that you don't even know how to utter or even what to say, the groans of the heart, the sighing of the heart. I will hear those too. The tears that you cry, I will collect those in a bottle. But I promise you, I will be your shepherd if you let me. And just as I saw that youth pastor come in there and I saw somebody who was strong and confident and happy, the things that I wasn't. Think of all the things that maybe you're like, I wish I was fill in the blank. I wish I was smarter. Wish I was stronger. Wish I knew how to do this life a little better. Jesus knows exactly how to do this life. And He's willing to walk it with you so that you never have to be alone. There was a Christian guy. He did shepherding. He was a sheep farmer. And he told about this condition that happened to sheep on occasion. And he said he was always on the lookout for it. At any time, day or night, he was always thinking. He'd always be watching the sky. He'd always be watching the fields for predators. He'd always make sure that this didn't happen to his sheep. Or if it did, that he would rescue them. And it was called being a cast sheep or a cast down sheep. And that would simply be the sheep, which again, you don't ever see them in athletics for a reason, but a sheep would get on its back with its little legs just flailing, and it's not able to get itself back upright. It's just left there. And so, obviously, vultures would be like, ooh, free meal. Or predators would be like, hey, this is an easy one right here. Let's just kind of go in and move in. Or maybe the sun would just kind of beat down on that sheep and just bake it and it can't move. And so a shepherd would always be on the lookout of, is there a cast sheep? Is there someone who has turned upside down and they can't get back upright? Or maybe it's down in a ditch or wherever. And he said, I was always alert. And he said, if I found out that there was, they come in and I realize, there's one missing. Where is it? He said, I dropped everything and went immediately out into the fields, out through the ravines, out through anywhere. He said, I looked and I looked. It didn't matter what time of day it was. I looked for that cast sheep because I knew it would be in trouble if I didn't get there quickly. And he said, once I would see that cast sheep off in a distance, he said, you know what I would do? I would run to it. And he said, one of the things that would happen inside is that gases would build up inside and basically suffocate it. It can't breathe anymore. And so he said, I would gently begin to just kind of pick it up. And he said, the whole time that I'm doing that, I'm just affirming it. I love you. And he said there would also be some correction in there, like, why do you keep running away? But it was always with grace, like, man, I care about you. And he said I would just gently put it back onto its feet. And then sometimes if it was cast for a long time, he said, I would rub its legs just to try to get circulation going again. And he said sometimes when it would get back up on its feet, it would fall back down. Sometimes it would start to, just kind of stumble. But he said eventually it would then bound off and run back and join everybody else. And he would restore that sheep. You're not going to do life perfect. I mean, you're just not. Sorry for the news flash. That's not a downer. That's I need a shepherd. I really need somebody who's going to stick it out with me even when I'm upside down. Even when I feel like I've completely blown it. And it's in those times when we've completely blown it, when we think, God must be ticked with me. He probably wants nothing to do with me ever again. I think I've blown it. I probably shouldn't go to youth group anymore. I probably shouldn't go to church anymore. There's no bother reading my Bible anymore. Those are stinking lies of the enemy. And instead, God is looking out. Are they downcast? I want to put them back on their feet again. And that's where we get that story in Luke 15 of the lost sheep and the shepherd who will go anywhere. And what does he do when he finds it? He kicks it hard. No, he doesn't kick. He puts it on his shoulders and carries it home joyfully. And he even says, let's have a party. That's the heart of God for you. That's the heart of God for you. And he's saying, I want to be your shepherd. When I was, let me just close with this. When I was 15 years old, so it was 2 years after Pastor Jeff came, I was 15 years old. It was Father's Day. My dad and I went to church. And like I said, there was just this upheaval of life that I was going through. I didn't want to hear about anybody talking about, if you die or, about hell or anything, because I knew, even though you would never know it, because I was going to youth group, I was even reading my Bible every day, I was looking the part, but this thing right here, this heart, was far from God. It was definitely going this way if he was over here. And so I knew that I wasn't right with God. I looked it. Anybody else, if there were adults in the youth group and they saw me, they probably would, oh, Keith, he's just such a fine young Christian guy. But my heart wasn't right with God. And so my dad, because my parents had split up, he was living at a campground for that summer. There was this camper trailer. So Father's Day, my dad and I are in this camper trailer by ourselves, two just broken down guys. We're at the table, those cool little tables, in the camper. Nothing on the table at all, like no food, no drink. It's not that we didn't have any, it's just like life stinks. We're not even hungry. And we just kind of looked at each other and it's like, what are we doing? We know that we need to get right with God. Why are we waiting? And I just remember there with my dad, we just asked him to come in to our hearts, to forgive us for all that we've done, especially our rebellion against him, our rejection of him. And we just asked that in his mercy that he would just forgive us. And there was nothing to eat on that table, but man, God just loaded us down with grace that day. Just a grace that says, you're forgiven. I'll take you in. Everything from the past is all taken care of because of what Christ did on the cross. And that day, I got a shepherd. And I'm so glad I did. Maybe there are those of you today who's like, yeah, I'm here. And maybe you think, man, I'm pulling this Christian thing off pretty good. But you know that the heart is not right.